All right. Hey, everybody. It's Rob here. Today, we're hosting an interview with the Diablo 4 developers, Colin and Zaven. Colin Zaven, thank you so much for taking the time and joining us today and answering some of the burning questions here from the community and me, of course, as well. To start, I want to focus a bit more on what's coming, like in the pretty immediate future of Diablo, like with all the stuff we've all been testing on the season 11 test server, potential learnings and changes we can possibly expect from the PTR. And then, like towards the end, I want to talk a bit more like long-term plans for the future of the franchise and of Diablo 4.
Sounds great. Thanks for having us.
All right. So I'm jumping right in here. We have about 1 hour time, and just feel free to I have a ton of questions. Like if we can go longer, that'd be great. But if not, don't worry about it. It's all good. So I want to start like right with. Sorry.
We'll try to be efficient with the answers.
Hell yeah. Okay, I like that, man. That's one of my favorite words in gaming. Efficient. All right. So starting with the leveling experience. So right now, running the campaign, especially on the PTR and also in the live game to a degree, seems to be like one of the most efficient ways and most rewarding parts just for leveling up your character. Now, I like that the campaign is like good and rewarding, but is it by design that this is like potentially like the best way to level up, even in comparison to, like going into like higher difficulty and leveling up there?
I'll say like we don't necessarily like the disparity between the campaign and the rest of the game right now, but we also don't want to just like take it away from the campaign and not give other vectors to create like a satisfying and sort of lucrative experience while you're leveling. So I'll try and be efficient. Like I think right now when we look at the leveling curve, we feel like the early 1 to 20 levels just feel a little bit too fast. You're leveling constantly, like every 10 seconds, and we just feel like that sort of cheapens the overall experience of, the sort of zero to hero power fantasy that Diablo is known for. So we kind of want to like slow that down, but then take all that time that we've sort of taken away and put it into, the sort of 50 to 60, or take it out of the 50 to 60, I should say. So overall, the same exact leveling time to level, but we just want to slow down the beginning part a little bit. Now, that's not exactly what you asked. But the sort of campaign stuff is something that we're taking a look at. We also want to like reward quest XP from certain quests a little bit more through the difficulty tiers, right? That'll help level up Nightmare Dungeons and Whispers and that sort of thing. So that is something we're looking into and we want to add to the game. And we think that'll sort of encourage you to play on hard and expert, right? If a Whisper turn in or, the individual Whispers or Nightmare Dungeon completion scale off of difficulty XP gains. And we think that'll like sort of create more of a competitive space between the campaign and the rest of the game. And then one more note is that we're also looking at the season's journey as like kind of the replacement for the campaign. If you don't want to play the campaign, I think the season's journey is like a good place to earn skill points and things like that. And I think right now one of the things that's sort of missing from that is some XP hits. So those are some of the things we're looking at.
Yeah, I really like that answer, in particular, like making higher difficulty more rewarding, because like this is not only a problem I feel oftentimes in the leveling, but also in the end game where you're not really getting like a crazy amount of rewards if you challenge your character. So if you can do something like in that direction, like what you mentioned, and like going more into like making when you actually like really challenge a character to make it more rewarding. Because I also noticed this, for example, fighting Duriel and like his horse of maggots in the Helltide, like the new thing in season 11, like that felt awesome. But it was also the same for those like maggots that you can kill with the divine gift. They give XP globes, but those globes, like they give the same XP, whether you did them on normal or on hard or even on expert or something, right? So is that also something that you might want to look at? Because it's just like wasn't rewarding if you were, challenging yourself in a harder difficulty.
Yeah, it's definitely something we're looking into. I will say there was like a bug where all the maggots were dropping XP globes also, which was creating kind of a crazy, insane leveling curve. Yeah, there's specific maggots, the Duriel maggots, and they have lots of XP globes in them because, they're Duriel maggots. So that's something we're fixing. We're also looking to make sure to compensate the overall curve and difficulty for it.
Okay, that's cool. I mean, I gotta say, like, leveling felt great. I was like initially worried because we didn't have any skill points to begin with, but I think you guys like tuned it already pretty well. And then if like the harder difficulties get a bit more rewarding, that's gonna be great.
I think we forgot it in the patch notes, so I'll just say it here and then we'll make sure it's in the patch notes. We actually did a pretty big baseline monster health and damage change. So in no way, shape, or form was this like, oh, we're gonna slow down the game and we want you to play longer. It's more like, if we're not going to give you 15 skill points to start, we should probably rebalance the base monster health and damage, which we did. And we want those skill points and Paragon points that you earn from the season's journey to feel like actual rewards, right? Like if we just took them out and didn't touch monster base health and damage, then you would just feel like you're treading water, getting back to the point where you were in the previous season. We don't want it to feel like that. We want those skill points and Paragon points to feel like a meaningful reward. So I'll just pull a number out of my ass. I think it was like, I'll give you an example of the amount of change we did. I think it's like we'll use level 50 as a baseline. I think monsters have like 60% less health at level 50 or something insane like that. And like you don't really notice when you're playing the PTR, it just sort of feels good. But those were the changes that we've made, and we're dialing in for season 11 launch as well.
Yeah, from how it felt to me also, like it was like just as fast as season 10. It felt very smooth throughout the way. So I think it was already a good job. If more difficulty becomes more rewarding, it's perfect to me. Going on, like we have the reintroduction of the Capstone dungeons on the PTR. I really like to see them come back, and also that you don't necessarily like lock all the difficulty behind the Capstones now. But that being said, I noticed this in the Capstones, but also in Diablo 4 in general, that bosses in particular often feel like they are like just overwhelmingly tanky and not really that engaging, at least from my perspective and from some of the sentiment that I hear from the community. This is like true in some Capstone dungeons. It's also true specifically in the tower later on. So are there any like plans to rework like some of the boss designs or to rework some of the numbers to make the fights like less about like it being a damage sponge and a bit more interesting and maybe like a bit more on the dangerous side as well?
Yeah, on the tower end, a lot of that was kind of like a scaling bug, I guess, to some degree. So a lot of the tower bosses have had their health kind of brought in line with what you might normally expect from a boss at that tier in the pit, as an example, right? Because it scales a little way. As far as capstones are concerned, we kind of made one big change is they don't have resilience going forward anymore. So
Oh,
when
nice.
season 11 launches, there's not going to be resilience on the capstone bosses. But beyond that, the goal is to make them a bit less tanky, but a bit more dangerous. Um, uh, and then specifically across the game bosses, it's just tuning, right? We're looking at it, but for those two features, they should be way less tanky and not be like 5-minute tower fights and stuff like that at the end.
Yeah, that sounds great. That's perfect for me.
Yeah. Real quick, I think it's an interesting insight. You'll probably appreciate this, Rob. Is like at a systems level, when we went and tuned all the rarity stuff, bosses were gaining. Trying to translate it. It's all like Excel numbers, right? So it's hard to like create a player-facing value.
Oh yeah, give
We
me some
kind of
numbers, man.
nerfed
That'd be
it.
awesome.
Well, it won't mean anything, right? I'll
Let's say
tell you
like
what we see,
Tower 100.
which is like bosses had like an additional 4,000% HP. 4,000% doesn't really mean anything to you because it gets translated into something else. But you can think of it as like the bosses at a baseline are, if you take your average Sea Hag or dungeon boss, it's probably somewhere around like 60% of what they were from season 10. So all bosses across the game had like roughly a 60% nerf if they were a dungeon boss, and then it carries over into Varshan and Duril and things like that, but at a lesser degree. Like it probably was like, I don't know, like a 10% HP nerf to Duril, for example.
That's great.
So all the bosses did get nerfed in terms of HP.
Thanks for sharing this. I mean, we also love to crush numbers. So 60% less, that's good. That sounds really good, man. Like looking forward to be seeing that like once the season hits. Next, I want to talk about itemization, masterworking, tempering, that kind of stuff. So with the new Affix pool expansion, like you guys added like a ton of like new defensive aspects with the way that monsters are more dangerous and stuff. But it also feels like very hard now to get some items, especially like when you're enchanting. I noticed this specifically, like, I don't know, you're trying to get skill ranks on your gloves or something, or a certain passive on the amulet. It feels like much harder and often takes like dozens of rerolls at the enchanter. Are there any plans to make the enchanting, like, I don't know, like some more way to target it than just like pure RNG? Like maybe you add, another option. Like I think right now we have 2 options and then no change as the third option. Like would you guys be open to adding like 3 options and then no change or something like that? Because it's just like, I don't know, I guess like 5, 6, 7 new affixes on each item. And it just makes getting what you want like a lot harder, especially enchanting.
Yeah, I'll say like a couple of things that we changed from the PTR. As an example, is that we've added cooldown reduction to gloves, rings, and I think so that's already like 3 more sources of CDR. And we've also reduced, or we've changed the weighting of the CDR affix to be the same as like your average, affix, so like crit chance and things like that. So it's like roughly 4 times as more common. So we are definitely looking at places where we can just sort of allow those types of things. We like that legendaries are sort of like create your own unique, right? We like that they're a little bit more random than the unique. So that is something we're always paying attention to. In terms of enchanting, I will say like it is a priority for the team to be looking more into crafting and end game of Diablo. I feel like we haven't like really hit the item modification or sort of slot machine, if you will, crafting loop that we know and love from Diablo. We think like we have a lot of like vertical growth on like make your item better, but we don't really have enough of the like how do I like try and make this item really cool and awesome if it doesn't start out cool and awesome. So that is something that we are looking into, and we want to service better as part of the end game.
That's cool. Is that also something that you're looking to do on amulets? Because right now, even in the live game season 10, it's very hard to get like the amulet that you want. Like most players want an amulet like a main stat percent and then 2 useful passives, right? And now with the new system, it's going to be like main stat and then 3 passives ideally, because I just don't see a world where you ever want like life per second on your amulet versus, like 2 plus 2 to heavy-handed or plus 2 to envenom or whatever passive that gives you 10% damage or something. So is there any like any plans to like maybe like I don't know, like make it a bit easier to get the amulet that you want? It's just so crazy now. Like I tried even with the cheat vendor, even with infinite obols on the cheat vendor on the PTR, I couldn't get the amulet that I want. It was not possible.
Yeah, run some more Undercity. I'm just kidding. I think that is something that we're always looking at the affix list, and I think it's a good point. It's something we can definitely take away and look into. Some of it is like a really tricky balance, right? We're always trying to make sure that the affixes that do roll on base gear have some use or purpose, right? And I think life per second sort of like is in that category where it's like really hard to really put a nail on it, right? It's like, well, it's really good early. So does that mean we should like take it out of the pool entirely in the end game? And
the thing is,
that's something that the team struggles with.
The problem is what it's competing. You always got to see like what it's competing against, right? Like if you have life on an amulet, like life per second, or you have like 10 multiplicative damage or something. Like it's just like either the life per second value needs to be like absolutely crazy, or that passive needs to be, I don't know, +1, or there needs to be like maybe there's a cap of only 1 passive or only 2 passives on the amulet. But I mean, you can in theory even have 4 passives on your amulet. So the RNG is just out of this world with this.
I totally hear you on that. Like I think like to dive a little bit deeper into the philosophy, right? Like it's good to have affixes that are clearly not for your build or clearly not good compared to some of their affixes, because it creates that sort of high and low, right? Like if the amulet was always good and it reliably was always good, I think you wouldn't have that dopamine of like the triple talent or the passives, right? So it's something that we're really careful about on not trimming out too much. If anything, we've heard a lot of feedback on this for like masterworking and tempering, where we've taken out some of the highs and lows, and people are like, oh, it kind of feels flat now. And it's like, yeah, that's what happens when we sort of streamline this and we bring in the highs and lows. So to give a real clear answer, I think like it's one of those things that we'll take away and look at it. I think like we do like the dopamine jackpot of multiple passives, but it's probably too much right now. It's probably too RNG. It's probably too 1 in a trillion, right? So I think that's something we can like slowly chip away and dial in, but it's not something that like we'll sledgehammer and say, okay, all the talents are now, or the passives, sorry, are now like 100% weighted, and everyone has amulets and everyone's running around with a ton of passives.
Mm-hmm. Okay, awesome. Yeah, and then one more question about the itemization part about that is we have a lot of cool affixes now. Like I like that we have like attack speed on weapon and this kind of stuff. But sometimes, especially in my chat and to newer players, this can lead to a lot of confusion, because we have this like 2 different attack speed caps. We have like category 1, category 2, and then they get attack speed on the weapon, but maybe it doesn't even give anything to them because they're already at the cap and stuff. Do you see like potential of like simplifying this or consolidating these like 2 caps to make itemization more clear, and maybe have like just 1 cap, it stacks up to 200, like simplify it a little bit, because the game doesn't tell you about this anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something we don't like, and we're working on making better. So nothing to share right now, but it's on our radar, and it's something that we are going to make better. As a philosophy thing, I kind of hate caps also. So I think as a team, we don't really like caps. It's Diablo, right?
It's caps to the fun, man. I keep saying that.
I know, it does cap to the fun. So that is something that we're looking at, and for attack speed and things like that. We want to make sure that, it is clear if we do have caps. Ideally, we don't have caps. And that's something we're always trying to balance around.
I like it. Awesome, man. Cool. Okay, then Sanctification. Now, this is like a little bit of a controversial one, as I'm sure you guys have seen, like based on some of the forum talks and stuff. So Sanctification Sanctification baseline is a great concept, but its introduction, almost like a main season 11 mechanic, seems to have raised certain expectations within some parts of the community. Like, while I personally see it mainly as like a final gamba step, as an option to fix like extra gear and make it even better. And many players, like, they don't see it as optional, but rather mandatory, to sanctify their gear. And then obviously they have like a chance of breaking it, like at the end of the progression, like curve of the item, right? So how would you respond to that perception? And what is the original like intent behind this like sanctification system?
Yeah, I'll start with the original intent, which is it totally is supposed to be this sort of final Gamba moment, right? Like, you're going to get a bunch of swords that are sort of similar, and maybe you have like you have two swords that have two GAs. And you're like, well, I really want potentially to get the other one to be better, right? So we like that you can slam it, and it potentially sometimes makes it better than the current one you have equipped. So we think that's like really healthy for the item game, because it means you're always excited about getting new items to try this final step on it. So that's the intention. I think you're totally right. Putting it in the seasonal sort of front and center space, there's a lot of expectations that it's going to feel very powerful. It's always going to be really good because we've sort of created that precedent with seasonal powers and things like that. So we do think we sort of were a little bit too conservative. We were trying to tune it for more of like an eternal approach, because we want something like this in the game. And that's why I was a little bit more conservative. And we've heard a lot of feedback that it doesn't feel as exciting as like a new seasonal mechanic. So that's something that we're looking at to make better and make it more exciting for season 11. I will say, like, as a dev insight, it is an interesting challenge for us in that we want to add to the game and enrich the game and make the game bigger overall. But we find when we add seasonal mechanics, there's like a lot of pressure for this to be really bombastic, really sexy, super power budget breaking, and just constantly adding those things over time is sort of what's gotten us into this like crazy bloat and power creep. You can think of mythics like this, right? Everyone's running around the same 3 to 4 mythics because they're really exciting and cool, and they broke the power budget, and it's like, let me keep all these. So it's a challenge for us to come out with something like this, then immediately integrate it into the game. So we're sort of taking an approach more of like, let's add something really cool and exciting. We're going to take big risks, and then we're going to take it back, and then we're going to sort of retool it and see how can we integrate this idea, if we like it and the players like it, back into the game that enriches the overall experience. Because we don't want, for example, like to touch on chaos uniques, is like, okay, we added chaos uniques wholesale to the game, and 6 months from now, everyone is running the exact same 4 mythics, and everyone on the Spiritborn's running around with Rod of Kapaleki on their boots, and there's no build diversity,
Yep.
and the game has sort of narrowed in a lot of ways. So,
And to add one thing is, you kind of, I think you mentioned earlier before we had the cut, it's like this idea of there's some mixed reactions and mixed feedback a little bit. And I think
Yes.
part of that is different parts of the community have different expectations over what the systems and stuff can provide. For some people, their expectation is like, well, I'll put in the time and I'll sort of semi-deterministically get to the place that I want to go. Right. Whereas I think there's a subset, not comparing sizes. There's a different set of people who are like, no, I just want like any crazy shit to be able to happen.
Hell
Right. And I want it to be like hyper rare and super difficult to do. Not in terms of like a mechanical challenge in the game, but just as, oh, it's a thing that can happen. Holy shit, jaw dropped or something like that, right? Like is the commonly cited example. And whenever we add those kinds of things, like we're kind of doing with sanctification or even the amulet thing you were talking about, it's, oh, hey, that seems really out of reach. That RNG seems really out of reach, but it feels required. I think figuring out ways that we could position these things in the game where they do feel like, oh, that's a crazy cool thing that can happen, versus if I don't get this, I fail outright, right?
Okay.
Is just like a constant balancing act that we have to look at. But my hope is that we can eventually kind of have everyone happy with the stuff that we're making fitting in and slotting into their experience in the right time and place. I think if we can do that, then everyone can kind of walk away like, oh yeah, crazy shit can happen, but it's a bonus. I don't actually need it to happen. Right? But it's a
Okay.
really challenging balance.
Yeah, I see. It's just like, I think the community is very split on this. So I have a few follow-ups on this. So like, with the way things are going, like, would you consider like allowing like a little post sanctification like edits, for example, letting us add sockets or letting us swap the aspect? Because it happened to me. Like, I was running an aspect on the item, and then I sanctified, and I got the same aspect. Like, so would you be open to like look into like allowing some of these like minor modifications?
I I think right now we really like the idea that it's a final step. Like, I think
Okay.
it's important that you sort of like have this, moment where you're like, oh, should I do this? Right? Because I think that adds to the anticipation of the moment and the drama of the moment. And I think the more we sort of allow, modifications post, it's sort of a slippery slope. It's like, well, why not enchanting also? And why not changing the temper? And I think like, it's certainly something we're willing to get feedback on. We do want to try it in its full form of like the full Gamba,
Okay.
I think there are some nice things though that we can potentially look at on like, yeah, if you have this aspect, maybe we won't roll that aspect because that literally is worthless, right?
Yes.
At the same time, like the high highs and low lows, right? Like if you're gonna do
Despair.
this on 3 different items and one of them it happens, it's like, well, yeah, go find another sword, right? But I think it's definitely something we'll take feedback on, right?
Yeah, I mean,
So,
I totally like that. Like that, it incentivizes me to pick up like all the one greater affix items because like good one greater affix
You
item
never know.
sanctified is better than a 3 greater affix with a bad sanctification. So it really adds like more like reasons to pick more items and to keep more items because they can possibly throughout modifying it be better. So I really like that part. One more thing about sanctification is the indestructible outcome. So well, obviously, like this was like I think kind of like the intention to have this as a nothing outcome. But
Yeah.
would you consider like either because the RNG is pretty crazy? I don't know if you would consider removing it or at least like reworking it slightly so it's at least useful to something like maybe, and I saw this a lot in the community, make it for all characters. I remember from the Rex interview, you guys were like looking into more ways to support like, having a second character and all this stuff. Maybe it could reduce the level requirements of the item to 0 or something instead of making it indestructible. Like that was one idea that was out there. Is that on the table? Something like this?
Yeah, I mean, I love the level requirement. We love the alting. I think probably for season 11, that's probably not something we're going to be able to do. But to touch on like the indestructible, yes, we are looking at essentially removing that outcome and giving you something as a bonus in return. And I think again, it's in the
You
spirit
said
of like
removing or moving? What do you say?
remove
Sorry.
it. Like indestructible
Yes.
won't be an outcome. Yeah.
Nice.
So yeah.
Okay. That's a big W, I
But
think.
yeah, I think it's something that, like, again, to be super clear, I think the sort of perspective we're taking on it is like, okay, it is a seasonal power thing. We're going to go crazy with it. It's probably going to be very generous, right? I think if we ever bring it back as a Gamba step, I think it does need to be a lot more conservative, right? To hit that like sweet balance of it's a bonus and it's something I'm really only looking to do on duplicate items. I think the median outcome has to be pretty close to like the top end outcome or it starts to feel mandatory. And I'll give you an example. I think tempering suffered from this, right? When tempering recipes was a 1 in 5, and one of those was double projectiles for the core skill you were using, it just felt infinitely bad to get the core skill you weren't using, and that median is just far and away so far removed from the top end outcome that I just don't think that's it creates a really unfun experience, right? So really to repeat myself, and I apologize, like I think like the eternal version, if we end up bringing it back, like if players really enjoy it, I think we're probably going to squish those bounds a little bit so the top end outcome isn't just wildly better than the median outcome. So yeah, so we're going to remove the indestructible. The other thing we're also doing is looking at essentially tying more of the rarity of the item to the craziness, crazy bad outcomes. So as an example, probably going to make it so that rares sometimes have crazy bad outcomes, right? It's like you're going to get a bunch of rares. We're not super worried about that. But a mythic ancestral, probably not super cool if, your Shaco gets the G8 CDR removed, right? So we're probably going to remove the bad outcomes for like the higher quality items. But we still want that randomness on some of the lower quality items because the fantasy is really cool, right? Like, oh, I got this normal and legendary item. What if I could make it super fucking awesome? And now it's like an ancestral with like, I don't know, like a mythic aspect on it.
Hell yeah, that's really cool. I love these changes, man. That's great. I think that fixes like a lot of the gripes that people have with Sanctification as of now. But we'll see when it comes out. Next topic I want to cover here is toughness, attack power, and just like the stat changes that you guys did. So I was very happy because I'm coming from D3. You guys know, like I love D3, and I feel great to get the toughness like returning from Diablo 3. But in its current form in Diablo 4 on the PTR, it was a bit unclear to me and also to many others what the number actually means or what it actually represents. There's like no intuitive way for you to know if you are like ready for a certain tournament world tier. Before you could always know like, okay, if I have like 50 or 70 always, or if I have like close to armor cap, I would be like, pretty good on surviving. But now you basically have no idea what does it mean to have 100,000 toughness? What does it mean to have 500,000 toughness? So would you consider adding maybe some kind of like recommended toughness, maybe to like the world statue or something to help the player like gauge like how much they need for their survivability?
Yeah, that's something that we're looking into. It's been really good feedback on the toughness system. I think the suggested toughness is something we're looking to. It's a tricky balance, right? Because I think you could look at attack power and say, well, attack power isn't actually super clear. It's not exactly correct.
That's one of my next
right?
questions. I mean, if you want to go into it,
okay,
that also works.
So it's a tricky balance to not enter into the attack power territory. We're trying to tell you, like, well, really, you just need X amount of toughness and you're going to be fine, because it's like, well, like Farshawn or one of the lair bosses, maybe that's a cool fishing thing we could do.
Yes.
The lair bosses, might one-shot you, and you're like, what the fuck, Blizzard? Like you said, I just needed this toughness, and I got slammed by Duriel. So it is something that we do want to just give a little bit more feedback to the player on like what's going on with toughness. Really, a lot of the toughness changes were to from our perspective, like we don't like caps, right? And we felt like defensives are pretty shallow, and we wanted more sort of leg room and progression to the defensives of the game. We also just wanted more consistent EHP or effective health. We felt like there were just so many different conditional DRs that you had to stack once you're sort of capped at your armor and resistances, that it just created a lot of disparity between the classes, and it made it really hard to scale up monster damage. Like we want to scale monster damage, we want defensives to be part of the sort of deep end game and something you have to pay attention to. So toughness was just a nice like, oh, we can kind of like make this a little bit more clear to the player because we're moving to a rating system which scales much better in an infinitely scaling game.
Yeah, sounds good. Okay, so on the attack power then, as a displayed stat, this can be like pretty misleading right now, especially for new players, because they kind of like get somewhat debated. Like if you have damage percent on an amulet, or you have +2 to Envenom passive, the Envenom passive is conditional, so it doesn't show on attack power, and the additive damage, which is just in this large pool of all the other damage stuff, like basically gives nothing. And I always get this question like, why am I not doing the damage that you do, or what are you doing with your attack power and stuff? So are there any plans to improve that, or how the attack power is calculated or communicated in the UI?
Yeah, I think so we are changing it to just be your weapon damage. So that will help with like, oh, I have a two-hander versus a sword and shield. So there's no more calculations that it's doing. It's just going to tell you what your weapon damage is, because we felt like we agree it was misleading, right? People were trying to make itemization choices around attack power when it was meaningless. Mm-hmm. So we just said, you know what, we're just going to make it weapon damage. Weapon damage is really important, right? So you always want higher weapon damage. That is for sure accurate, yes. And that's the change that we're going to be.
I mean, unless you're playing something like Thorns, but that's very like niche. I mean, that's another like that's great. That sounds good. Like it's just very hard to explain this over and over again. So very cool to see like the UI and the tooltips represent that. That's very cool. I want to talk about like with the toughness changes again, like in end game setups, especially in season 11, like certain builds like with Melted Heart and like some of the Spiritborn evade builds with like a bunch of barrier. I think it was crazy for toughness. Like it felt like I was already like in the ultra end game, like I'm very close to immortal again, even with having like very dangerous monsters. Do you plan on keeping like pit and tower monster like damage scaling like the same, or would you consider like at some point like having the higher tiers, like also with like the boss HP reduction, like maybe make them more dangerous, like on the very high tier? Like I think in the beginning it was already like very tough, but towards the end I felt like I was outscaling the content like way easy with my toughness, because as far as I know the monster damage doesn't keep scaling in those towers.
Yeah, so we have made a change where we've kind of chilled out on the damage scaling from Torment 1 to 4. It felt like it was like pretty aggressive, considering, you weren't getting as much DR and EHP. So we've sort of chilled out the monster damage from Torment 1 to 4. And then we are planning on continuing to scale monster damage at some rate past Torment 4. So you're totally right. At 100, we stopped scaling monster damage. We are looking to scale it by some amount every tier after. Of course, within the bounds of reason, right? Because like you start to hit a diminishing return on a lot of your EHP gain. So that is something that we're dialing in currently. But we do want to continue to sort of ask the player to consider their defenses. We don't really like the idea that you're just running around immortal.
Yeah, Cool. And I mean, you guys said it in Rex's interview as well, that there is like some more potential like group synergy coming. And I think right now with this, how it works right now, like bringing like toughness, damage reduction buffs to the group felt kind of underappreciated. So I think with that change, that's also going to change a lot. And you maybe want, some guy that heals you, that gives you toughness, that stuns the monsters like the rogue does, for example. So I think that's a really cool development. Like for the high tiers, like actually make it dangerous, make it more like exciting, and make it less of a damage sponge. So that's also another cool change.
We want like some of the elites to be like, oh, should I even engage this elite, right? Like I assume we're going to talk about the tower at some point, but like I think like what's really cool. What's really cool about that, right, is sometimes there's some cool strategy on like, you know what, I'm just not going to fuck with that elite. Like I'm going to skip this one because it's going to take me too much time, or it's going to wreck my day. When we think of that kind of strategy in the really deep end game of Diablo is fun. So we want to maintain that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, sounds great. Yeah, I think it's good to move on to, I want to do the pit first and then the tower after that. So in the pits, you guys added Belial and with the eyes and stuff. I think it's a great addition baseline. Like they keep the pace up and they really help to prevent like these monster shortages, because sometimes in the live game, I mean, I guess many of you listening here know this, like sometimes you just run out of monsters to kill. And that never feels good in a pit or in any ARPG, because you just don't have enough progress to spawn the boss and you have to backtrack or something. So by clicking the eyes, I think it's really cool on higher tiers and stuff that you can like get extra progress. But I heard a lot of frustration from controller players, but also for myself. Sometimes there's like, when you're doing like a high tower tier, like there's like some monsters like right on the eyes and you can't click them, and it's a whole fuss on a controller. It can be very frustrating. So would you consider like making them maybe like auto activate, or like any other way of triggering them when you like walk near them or something like that?
Yeah, by the way, I'm really excited that we're being able to try some crazy stuff in the pit. And I know it starts kind of simple, right? But it's like, okay, now that we have this tower off on the side, we can start just doing kooky stuff here. And the monster shortage thing that you're talking about, like, is something we actually attacked very specifically in the tower. So in the future, the hope is to actually backport that stuff and just eliminate that issue entirely in the pit. For Belial Eyes specifically, the plan is that when Season 11 launches, if you get near them, they'll pop.
Yes.
So you don't actually have to do the hard interact. You could just like physically walk near them to some short radius, and then they'll just pop. So change forthcoming.
All right, cool. You guys are killing it, man. That sounds awesome. Like I'm even more excited for Season 11 now. So one more thing there. Like the main reason like for running pits to me was like I farm my glyphs, I farm XP, and I have also a nice way to farm obols. I don't know if it was bugged on the PTR, but on the PTR, the XP significantly nerfed, obols completely removed. I don't know, can you explain like the reasoning behind these changes and like what the design goals are? Maybe it was just a bug, I don't know. But I think they added a nice touch of variety and an extra convenience to run them, because we talked about this earlier, like running high pits was already not rewarding at all.
Yeah, it's definitely a bug.
Okay, so XP is not going to change, and obols are going to stay.
Yes, yeah, it's a bug that the obols aren't dropping. We did some XP backend changes, and we're looking into why it's there's such a big disparity right now.
Okay, because it feels like XP is like half basically, and obols are going to come back. Okay, that's nice. Because I was like thinking maybe they move it to the Undercity or something, but I think it's really cool to have some extra incentive basically of farming that. That's really cool to see.
Yeah, it's a PPR.
Okay, yeah, nice. And then I always want to like talk a bit more about the XP, and the most efficient pit here that we farm right now is really focused only about speeds, right? From my perspective, if you want to be efficient, we had that word a lot in the beginning. If you want to be efficient, you always play a tier that is in no way challenging to your character, because the way that the reward scale, in comparison to D3, for example, we had like 17% health, and then I think we had 7% XP. In Diablo 4, it's like 20% health, and then 1% or less than 1% XP scaling. So it always feels like you're only forced to do speed content if you want to be efficient, right? Obviously, you can try to do higher pit tiers, but it always ends up completely inefficient. So are there any ways to change that, and what's like the future direction that you want to take with this like challenging content and the rewarding system around it?
Yeah, I think this is sort of like endemic to, I would say, the game right now, which is, you can get very quickly into a situation where you are just blasting, let's just say Torment 3. But Torment 4 is just so much harder that you can't even go into Torment 4, and nothing in Torment 3 challenges you. And we don't like that scenario where you don't feel like you have some place to push into and have like a more sort of rewarding and difficult experience. So that's like one thing we don't really like about the current how the torments are tuned is that it's to sort of feast or famine. So that is something we're looking into. We want to add some more torments to sort of smooth out that journey, because we think it feels much better when you feel like you have a place to fall back to just sort of turn your brain off and blast and farm. We love that. We don't want to like take that away or make that feel like it's an ineffective way to play the game. At the same time, we don't like that there isn't like that next sort of mountain to climb, where you can challenge yourself and play in a difficulty where you can actually sort of get by and you feel rewarded for it. So that's something we're tackling, and that will carry over into the pit, right? Because the pit is very much tied to the torment tiers. So nothing for season 11, I think, in terms of huge swings, but it is something that we are trying to make better, and we want to make better for the future.
Awesome. Yeah, that's cool. I just want to be like, rewarded for more challenge. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to call on to say the thing. So, kind of like intent for like how we view these kind of peaks in the game is we've kind of often referred to this internally as a series of summits, right? I climb to the top of this mountain, and then from there I can see all these other places I can go, and all these other challenges and places I can travel, journey to and challenge myself to go climb, right? But when the game just kind of feels like it's just this nice perfectly flat thing. That's what it kind of feels like, right? It's flat. So we really want to make these high points that you can push yourself to, and then you can see all these other things that you can challenge yourself to do in terms of a journey.
Cool. Okay, nice. And then the last thing about the pits, and this also translates into the tower. Like there is quite some disparity in some of the maps, right? You have this like open desert, like the pit map, and then you have sometimes these like narrow spots where you run into dead ends and stuff. And this can just lead to like a lot of frustration and backtracking issues we talked about earlier. So also in that direction, like, I mean, maybe you adding more monsters, like you talked about that earlier already, but are there also like updates planned for like the map generation and how those works to like streamline and make this like a little more fair and less fishy? Because fishing was a big thing in D3, and to some degree, like if you want to get on the leaderboards, I think you will have to fish for the maps. And any improvements we can expect in this direction?
So I think Tower is it's not perfect. We're not pretending it is. We've already found a bunch of bugs from people posting screenshots and stuff everywhere of Tower maps. So thank you for that. Keep going. We will keep iterating and fixing those things up. But you can kind of look at the difference in generation rule sets between Pit and Tower as an indication of places that the Pit can go. And again, I mentioned this in a previous stream. Like we've rebuilt the back end like completely to be able to be smarter with some of this stuff. So I'm just gonna rapid fire some things that Tower does, and some things it's gonna do when we actually hit season 11 proper, right? So Tower generates maps going screen up, like up. Right, you don't actually ever go back. You don't go down screen. So with our isometric camera, it's actually much harder, even if it's like a little bit, to play down screen of where your character is. So generally speaking, you're going up toward the left or right corner, or in some cases, kind of just like straight up. The dead ends, there's not really dead ends south of you. There are some cases where there are very minor, as small as we can make it, dead ends north of you. Again, your camera can see further into those. You'll know they're a dead end before you actually walk too deeply into it. Some of the changes that we're planning to make when season 11 launches proper is to make sure that the highest value stuff doesn't actually even spawn in those dead ends. So there's not going to be elites and things like that, tucked away in a closet 5 miles off screen or whatever. Everything's going to be on this kind of main path. So there's going to be some navigation tests, right? Like being able to know that I'm actually headed the wrong way and things like that. And that's just part of the overall mastery of Diablo 4. I know all the tile sets. I know generally how they roll. That makes me better than the person who keeps walking to a dead end. Look at that schmuck. He doesn't know that that's what the tile does. I know, so I'm better.
It's
right?
the map awareness.
Situations like
yes.
that, we don't want to remove. Yeah, exactly. It's like full mastery, right? When we say mastery, it's not just my gear is good. I have knowledge of the game at such a deep fundamental level that I can look into the thing and say like I know where the algorithm is going, right? It's a learnable thing to some degree for some of our best players. The all this stuff eventually we're really excited to eventually take it back to the pit, but when it gets there, this consistency is not the primary goal, right? The benefits of everything we're doing right now shaves off all the worst cases. There is no long ass tunnel going to the left, but I was actually supposed to go right. Like that just doesn't actually happen in the tower in the same way that it happens in the pit. So yeah, we're going to take those things away, but we're actually open to doing some crazier stuff, more open layouts in some cases. Maybe some more densely packed ones than usual. And there are some cases where tile sets have disparities that are kind of baked into the art, right? Like art's beautiful, but it's like, well, caves are caves,
Yes.
right? And forests are forests, and there's not really a difference. So we're also removing some of the kind of the more narrow, tunnely stuff when Season 11 launches, and we're kind of taking those offline for a while until we can figure out a solution to reintroduce them. But again, that's tower, and pit can go as varied as we want. We can have dungeons that are significantly longer, significantly shorter, wider, crazy shapes and stuff like that. But no matter what we do in the pit, the intention is not to say like, ha, we put the exit behind you and there's 7 miles in front of you. Isn't that variety? It's like, no, that's not variety. That's just dumb. So eventually we'll shave off all those, variety that's just bad, right? Strictly bad in all cases. But there will be a bit more wider range of possibilities in the pit eventually. And tower is going to be this narrow, but tower we're looking at as kind of the foundation that we're going to build the pit off of in the future.
Hell yeah. Well, that sounds cool.
Yeah, and to give an example that I love that we talk about, Zaven and I, is like, it's probably not cool if 1 in 10 runs, I'll use D3 as an example, like jail, jail's the best fucking, layout. It's amazing. It's probably not cool if, the tower 1 in 10 rolls jail, because now you're just fishing for jail. But we're super cool with that in the pit, right? Like we actually think that's awesome. If sometimes you run the pit and you get this insane clear, we actually think that's really fun. So that's why it's like really cool that we can branch them, because we want the pit to be a little bit more varied, a little bit more wacky, and it lets us do crazy shit like all goblins and things like that, right? And it's not going to hurt the competitive integrity that everyone's looking for out of the tower.
Yeah, cool. I mean,
Yeah,
tower is.
I've seen a lot of, I've seen a lot of like commentaries like, oh, the tower is so close to the pit. It's like, yeah, technically true. My perspective, pit's too close to the tower. The pit's the thing that really needs to go to Crazy Town. And I think one of the reasons we're seeing that feedback is, well, that's because the pit is like this very strictly, rule set guided thing. And obviously that's great for a competitive mode. And so tower is going to be ideally the best version of that we can make, better than what the pit can provide. And once we have that, pit can just run. It can just do whatever the hell it wants.
So on that note, because I also heard that a lot, I feel what would like change how people like see it in their mind is like it starts with how you open it. I feel like right now you open it like opening it at the same spot. Just in their minds, it's the same thing. So I would like, I don't know if you guys consider like giving it like a stronger identity, like maybe have like a big physical, beautiful asset, like a tower structure or something in the city. I think there's a lot of like dead space all around with like a unique visual asset, like maybe even like a short quest line or something to introduce like the tower as something like completely separate from the pit. Because I feel like it just starts right there with how you open it. And that's why it's the same in so many people's heads right now.
Yeah, the decision to kind of put them together was honestly kind of out of convenience. I know you mentioned there's a lot of dead space, but one of the issues that we've got is we have a lot of towns, we have a lot of capitals, and not everything is everywhere. And the more objects there are to add, the more difficult it becomes to start actually populating this thing across the game. So because these things are so integrated in terms of their underlying stuff, it just made sense to put it in the same object. That being said, the long-term plan is there is going to be some experiential differences between the two that are more pronounced. Things like the reward structure is going to be wildly different in the tower. There's going to be, eventually we'll have some more flavorful stuff, not mechanical stuff, just like fun stuff that can happen in the tower as well. So over time, they will diverge a bit, but keeping in the obelisk just lets us make this a very portable thing. Because something else that we're looking at is saying, well, what can we do to try to make it that you're not just like trapped in Karagar forever? Right? Like maybe you can go somewhere else and do some of these things. And so kind of condensing the number of interaction points lets us be more flexible about that in the future.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool that we can like test all the tower stuff like right now. It's just like, so many people, they're gonna like see this as the first time, and that's how they're gonna like feel about it, right? Like if they see it for the first time, and right now, the way I understand it, there's not gonna be any rewards for the tower when it launches in when the beta of the tower launches in season 11. And I think one of the biggest problems is also there's not gonna be, as far as I understand, there's not gonna be an inspect feature. And I think this is like also going to be a big frustrating point for a lot of players. So can you like maybe share a little bit if this is this a feature that is prioritized, like early post the launch, or also like when do you guys think roughly like these rewards are going to come in? Because like for like a total casual player that doesn't really care much about the leaderboard, like he just hears about this like new tower end game, and then like why would he go do it, you know?
Yeah, I'm gonna just answer this in reverse order, but I'm gonna say everything I'm gonna talk about is not in season 11.
Yes.
It is long-term plans. Some are shorter than others, right? But it's something that we know we're gonna be developing Tower for a while. It's not gonna happen in one seasonal cycle. So in terms of inspect, so the game has a profile. You can set that profile to private. I'm saying this because separate to that, the intention is you can view builds on the tower. So your profile setting private has no bearing on people's ability to see the build that you ran. So long term, no secret builds
They
on the
can't hide
leaderboard.
it.
Everyone can look at it. No hiding. You're gonna operate in daylight, right?
Sharing
Everyone
is
can
caring.
see what you did. Right, and we think this is really important to kind of preserve some of the integrity of the tower. But also just I think something that makes Diablo really special is this constant like communication about what's the right thing and being able to see what other people do and things like that. And we don't want to erode that with the tower, right? We actually want to celebrate it. We want to put a big spotlight on it, like holy shit, that guy got first. What did he do? Right? And then can I do the same thing better? Maybe I see the build and I just don't know how to do it. What is he actually executing in terms of commands? What's his skill and things like that? And like I said, there's a whole other information layer that we are anticipating and expecting and building towards, where it's like, well, you can copy my build, but I know literally every square inch of the game better than you. So it doesn't really matter if you copy my build. So in terms of skill expression, we're just looking at it as one more facet, but not something that we have to like protect. So build viewer. Other thing you mentioned is rewards. So I'm going to talk about this conceptually as two things. One is tower rewards and what is leaderboard rewards. So tower rewards are not aimed at people in terms of their competition with other people. It's more about your competition with yourself. So the idea is, and right now we're thinking this is like it'll be reset, right? So a new season starts eventually when this is, and we'll clear the board. Is to create kind of a pseudo reputation system for the tower exclusively, that the reward rank is tied to your ability to clear certain difficulty tiers. So as an example, there's a reward at tier 1 completion, and there's a reward at 5, and then 10, and goes all the way to 150. And this would be stuffed with functional rewards, gear, currencies, and things like that, but also transmogs in some cases. So this is like the really big, I don't care about the social aspect. I don't care about being number one. I just want a really good way to push myself and incentivize myself to push further and further up the tower, further and further up the difficulty tiers. And that's something that's going to be exclusive for the tower rewards, right? That's tower. Leaderboard rewards. So we've talked kind of about this like cyclical approach where every, n amount of time we reset the leaderboard and then people have to go and vie for first place again. So we're still talking about what that duration is going to be. There is no like final call. There's probably going to be mention about like a 1 week cycle or a 2 week cycle or whatever. We're going to listen to the community. If people have thoughts, please post them. Please talk about it. We read all this stuff. But whenever a cycle ends, the idea is that we look at the top some amount of people. I'm saying some amount because, it's a top 10, top 100, top 1,000, I don't know, across all the leaderboards, right? All the class leaderboards, 2-player, 3-player, 4-player, and then a hardcore version of all of those, right? Top placements across those boards. The idea is we would also give some functional rewards, right? So there's gear, currencies, things like that. But there's two new things that we want to really develop. And these are the things that are, again, going to take a while. So rewards, this is why they're not immediately available, right? Because we want to make sure Tower is super high integrity space before we start giving out some prestige stuff. So one is prestige titles. The idea being that your character earns the right to have this title, and there's some special formatting and visuals on that, and it looks different than all the other titles in the game, right? And it belongs to that guy, not your account, right? Not your season. You can't just equip it on a level 1 or anything like that. It belongs to that guy. So holy shit, that guy got first place on the Barb leaderboard or something like that, right?
Yeah, that's
The
cool. I
other
really
one-
like the idea with the milestones that you mentioned, like having like certain milestones for certain, like, I don't know, if you every 10 or every 5 tiers or something that you personally beat, you get a milestone reward. That's going to be cool. And this inspect feature, I think, is also so important to help shine light on like if there is like some potential bugs that are going to go on. Because with the introduction of leaderboards, people have at least some people have some incentive to like, unfortunately, like hide these bugs or not share them or something, right? And so if you have an inspect function, like you can definitely figure this out much faster if potentially there's a bug going on or something like that.
The last kind of big thing that we're talking about doing right now is something we're calling Halos, which is an exclusive cosmetic that your character can equip. Again, it belongs to the character, right? You can't just make a level 1 and say like, oh yeah, he did the thing. It's like, no, that guy did it. And again, this is a very exclusive list of people are going to be able to do this. It's the top placer placements from across the community. So we're looking for ways for people to celebrate it, to have bragging rights. And the reason why we don't have all these rewards in place right now is like for any of that to make sense or matter, everything actually has to be functional. It has to actually be balanced,
Has to be
right?
fair.
It has to be,
Yeah.
let's say, it has to be perceived as fair by the community. It has to be accepted by the community. So we want to make sure we do that before we just start handing out candy, right? So we're committed to doing this. It's going to happen. All eyes right now are on making sure Tower is a competitive place, that it has leaderboard integrity and things like that. You know, we've talked about SSF and things like that potentially coming to help strengthen those things, and that would be its own section, right? So imagine the person who did Barb SSF potentially in the future, and they've got a Halo. It's like, oh shit, that guy did that all by
Hardcore Barb
himself.
SSF.
Hardcore Barb
Hardcore,
SSF, yeah. Colin knows I play hard, so he's keeping me honest.
Yeah, that sounds like very, very fun. And like also like if you're just in the city and some people can see it, oh, this guy has the I don't know the rank 1 giga wings or something, like whatever, right? And that's gonna be pretty cool. One last thing to touch on that, and maybe you already considered this or something to maybe consider. In D3, I think it was great with how you had this like pop up. Like there was like the dopamine hit that Rux was talking about 2 days ago as well. Like when you actually did the rank 1 or when you did a rank, there would be like a broadcast to your like entire friend list. You would see like a nice pop up, like I don't know, you did rank 1, this is your final time, and this kind of things. Like that was also completely missing from this like a PTR version. So are there like these UI updates? Like that's also like planned, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. What we have right now is good. It's functional. It's just to like do a simple layer of communication for this to not feel like nothing happened. But the plan is eventually to embellish a lot more, to give more information, to provide information about your rank, potentially where you sit in relation to other people, and things like that across the leaderboard. Yeah, we've got big plans for the communication layer of this as well.
Cool. All right. So the next big last topic I have on the season 11 stuff is like class balance and how you guys approach it. So with season 11, obviously like the power level has been extremely high with some crazy power creep. And now in season 11, like that seems to go like a bit more down to earth, right? We don't necessarily need builds to hit for like 2 quadrillion damage and all this stuff. However, there is a valid concern I feel in the community about the class balance. Like right now we have so many like builds in S tier. I think in my tier list we have like 16, 17 like S tier builds that are all like crazy good in season 10. And that does seem to narrow down, at least based on the PTR observings, that does seem to narrow down quite a bit with season 11, and power level obviously goes down. So how does the team like evaluate this like class balance, and what is it balanced around? Is there maybe like a certain tower or pit level that you guys think a build should be able to reach? And if yes, how high would that be, or how do you approach this entire like class balance?
Yeah, I think I can help answer this. So one change that we are making from the PTR is we're reducing the pit tier scaling, so that generally that's going to give, I don't know, 5 to 10 tiers to all builds, and we think that's going to push them much more into like the deeper pits, right? We are trying to like just holistically, not just in season 11, look at all the places where we feel like we're just giving out power for power's sake and it's bloating the overall system. We sort of have 2 categories of power. One is, we want there to be chunky bonuses that you can look for, right? Like legendaries, uniques, and we think those are really fun and cool. And those are always multiplicative, obviously. I think the places where we're not super convinced that it's adding a ton of coolness and variety to the game are like, you could look at the skill tree passives, for example. It's like, do all 15 sources of multiplicative damage need to be there? I think that's something we're talking about. Paragon glyphs are also sort of a place for that, right? It's like debatable. Like, is it cool to have this big multiplier on the Paragon glyph? It's like, yeah, like it incentivizes you to push in the pit. But, I think there's also something to be said about aggregating a bunch of statistics to slowly sort of make your character stronger. And I think right now we sort of emphasize too much on like the multiplicative bonuses. So, sorry, that was a long answer to my question. So we are looking at reducing the pit tier scaling. As far as like what do we consider viable, I think like generally what we've been thinking about is like we've noticed that a lot of players sort of anchor around like maxing out their glyphs, and I think we've been pushing a little bit closer to like, okay, S tier means that everyone can sort of max out their glyphs in the pit. So that's why we're giving sort of everyone 5 to 10 pit tiers. We're probably not going to land in a place where everyone's doing 100 in season 11, but we're looking for like 80, 85, and we kind of want at the top end, that's sort of where players are going to be landing. Our hope, there might be some crazy stuff that people cook up or crazy things that sort of push past that, but we think generally that's like a pretty healthy balance to be in. But it's always sort of a sliding scale depending on what the community feels like an important milestone for the game is. It's to give maybe a more broad answer is, I think we sort of want to architect the game in a way where you have satisfying endpoints where you're like, okay, I did this thing, like to go back to what Zaven was saying on the summits, like I've scaled this summit, I've like maxed out a glyph, or I've beat this capstone, I'm feeling really good. Do I want to keep going? And I think like that's the question we like when the players ask themselves is like, should I keep going, or do I want to make a new character, or do I just want to take a break for this season and come back refreshed for another exciting season in 3 months? So that's sort of our thought process when it comes to the overall class balance of the game.
Mm-hmm. So the tower and pits, they're going down like 5 to 10 tiers. But Torment 4 difficulty, I mean, I like this. That stays roughly the same as it was on the PTR, right?
Roughly the same. Yeah.
Okay, nice. Okay, the next one might be...
go ahead. Monster damage is a little bit lower in Torment 4, I think.
But it scales up higher in higher tiers of tower and pits. Yep. Okay. I think that all sounds really good to me. Many players were kind of upset about the removal of the perma teleport. Like, this is like a big discussion point that was on the forums, also in my stream. And I generally totally agree that Sorg in speed farming has been overperforming like crazy compared to all the other classes. Like, it was like night and day difference. However, I would have always loved to see, more buffs to slow classes, like the necromancers, like the druids. For example, maybe we talked about the caps earlier. We are a removal of the movement speed cap of the 200%. So do you think there's any chance, or maybe there's some technical limitations to it if you want to talk about it, this kind of approach of like, I don't know, increasing the movement speed cap similar to how we had it in D3, it was completely uncapped, or maybe like making it into 300 or 400%, to not like, take the fun away from the Sorgs, but make the other classes also feel like more fun in that direction?
Yeah, so I'll touch on the Sorg teleport one real quick because I'm not sure if we've talked about it recently, but we are looking to reintroduce some of that power back into the Oculus. So if you have the unique for your teleport, we think it's a good compromise. It's like, okay,
it's not free.
If you want to do this crazy teleport thing, then you should have the unique, and you should probably have to cast teleport on your bar. The evade stuff on frame was a little bit crazy. And then we've also looked at some of the other, I'm sorry, Rob, classes like Leap, right? Because we felt like it was just blowing the Sorg teleport out of the water, and we've tried to bring those two more within harmony there.
Okay.
I think as far as like the movement speed caps, I think it's a symptom of, when you're to go back to that like idea that so much of the game sort of right now revolves around speed because you hit a point where the only way to become more efficient is to go faster. I think that's what's putting a lot of pressure on having to go extremely like blazing fast. Like we're like, it feels like 2 to 3 times faster than like Diablo 3 even, for example. And we think that that's more of a problem on like the difficulty not scaling appropriately with the rewards, right? Like you can imagine if there were more sort of torment tiers and things like that, it'd be more on like, well, how do I actually kill monsters effectively? But in the current state, you're overkilling monsters by like 10 to 20 times, even sometimes like 50 times. And the only way to become more efficient is to move faster. So to sort of put a period on what I'm saying, like we kind of want to ensure that monsters and difficulty and rewards are scaling so that the only way to be more efficient isn't just to move 50 screens a second, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I always like speed, and I don't know. Like I still like.
Oh, really?
Love to
Everyone
see-
loves speed. Yeah.
Everybody loves speed, and it just felt so good in D3. You know, like I could be on my spin to win Barb, and I could move around at 500% movement speed, or on my God Demon Hunter Gears of Dreadland 600% movement speed. I just spin around. It felt so smooth, and I'm often missing that. You know, in Diablo 4 right now.
It's super fair.
Yeah. Quick time check. So we have like about 5 more minutes. I have like 2 more questions about class balance, and then some rapid fire questions about like what we might see in the longer future. Does that sound good? Are you guys good with that?
Yeah, sounds good to me.
All right. On the PTR, in terms of like class balance and stuff, there was a lot of hype and a lot of cool things like about the mythic rework from the Melted Heart of Selic. Players loved to see like iconic build returns. Like I personally really love to play the Hoda Whirlwind Barb. Like this Barb we played in the popular season 2. I really had a blast with this. And obviously there's been a lot of discussions about like potentially like capping all of this. We talked a lot about caps and how I don't like them personally. So I'm not a fan of these hard caps, but those builds, especially Hoda Barb, that was clearly overperforming. So what's your approach to these? It was not only on the Barb, right? We also had a Druid that was uncapped, a Necromancer that was uncapped. So how do you plan on like balancing these outliers without, you know, kind of limiting the creativity and uniqueness of these like, you know, high resource, like main stat stacker kind of builds?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is very similar to, you know, on the PTR and in seasons we want to try insane things, right? And like part of what makes a really insane Diablo sometimes is like staring into the abyss on like, oh god, if we mess up the tuning, the entire game breaks, right? And the players love that, right? Like they're super eager to see us try and break the game, and they're also very eager to break the game. So, you know, that's why we're trying these types of things. The Mythic Unique, you know, why not do something crazy? We did find in the PTR that, yeah, it was causing some insane problems, and it also just didn't feel good to see everything that expended all resource have these caps baked in. It felt like it was really removing a lot of the creativity and fun of the game, right? Like even if it was perfectly balanced, it just didn't feel good. So we are going to be changing the amulet to keep the spirit of it, which is we want there to be sort of like this primary resource mana shield type of mythic unique. We think that's like a cool thing to have, but it's going to be much more tame. I think it's like a doubling your resource, but then the conversion from damage to resource is much higher. So you're still as tanky as you were on PTR. We're just not creating, you know, several thousand primary resource. And we've also removed all the caps that were talking to resource as part of that change.
Thank you.
Yeah, so everything's uncapped again.
Yeah, and then you can like keep scaling it into the end game. I really love the approach there where you like it starts out very slow, like a bit like, you know, on the weaker side, like you just equipped it. It's not like you're an instant god instantly, and you have like very nice ways of scaling this with your character all the way into the end game. Love it.
Totally. So that was our approach on that.
Cool. Last question for class balance is about snapshotting. This has been like a major topic for a long time already, especially with certain like buff-dependent builds, like the Cataclysm setup, like with this Melted Heart re-emerged on the PTR, and you have to like snapshot the overpower and the passives and do like a very specific skill rotation. I always feel like many players like dislike this entire playstyle where it like fully revolves around the snapshotting, else you do like ZDPS. So in the past, it was like kind of like the stance that this is intended on the Cataclysm Druid, if I understood this right. So how do you approach like balancing like these kind of interactions, like keeping them interesting, but without making this like snapshotting like feel mandatory?
Yeah, that's a great question. Like as a team, we really don't like the snapshotting of like swapping out gear, then, you know, casting something. And we also don't like when the snapshotting revolves around like luck of the draw, like overpower feels like this, right? It's like if I didn't overpower this run, then the run is fucked. And we don't like that. So we're looking at mechanics that are obviously causing a lot of these snapshotting problems. Like I think concealment, for example, had this on the rogue where you conceal to get guaranteed crit and vulnerable, and then you would, you know, obviously snapshot that on your Dance of Knives, and we don't like that kind of thing. So we're moving more towards like duration buffs and things like that because we don't like encouraging this kind of playstyle. As far as like our main culprit, it feels like, you know, overpower is like sort of the main source of a lot of these really, you know, terrible snapshotting circumstances because it is so luck based. I will say one thing we do like though, and it's sort of like counter to what I just said, is I think if we say, you know, your next Cataclysm is going to do all these crazy things, we like that the entire cast of Cataclysm is going to do these crazy things. What we don't like is that when you cast Cataclysm, there's a chance that it's going to overpower, that then makes it ridiculous, right? And we don't like that part of it. So, we don't like snapshotting. We're looking at some of the more egregious mechanics that cause this really feel bad RNG snapshotting that we don't like.
Okay, cool. All right, there will be like a rapid fire section here for the end. So I'm just like, answer what you can answer, guys, like however you want to answer it. This is this is also about like a more like long-term future. So any chance we see a popular chaos powers return, like maybe as an aspect or similar what you did in the past, such as like the savagery power, for example, on the druid, like that really enabled like the raven build and made it like pretty crazy.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we're always looking to bring back some of the different mechanics in a way that like enriches the build diversity. So it's definitely not off the table.
Okay, cool. And any chances for the like activity chaos rifts to come in like some form back? I think there was like a really fan favorite mechanic, like just having the chaos rifts pop up, and people love doing them.
Yeah, I mean, again, like it's something that like players really loved, and we're going to look for ways to bring back the things that players loved into the game. We've done this with like season 2, where we learned about like blood harvest and things like that, and we merged it into Helltide. So yeah, it's definitely something that we are looking into and wanting to bring back in some shape or form.
Mm-hmm. And last in that direction is, go ahead.
Big success has been kind of taking it offline, so that when we do put it into the game, we put it into the game in a way that is responsible, and actually adds instead of overshadows everything else, right? So it just lets the team have kind of a cycle, and eventually, if stuff is really cool, we want to keep it too. We just have to make sure that it actually fits in properly to the game, because we also have season 11 is bringing its own things too.
Yeah, I think it's a really big challenge, especially on Chaos Armors right now, right? Because they so much cannibalize like all the defensive and even the utility aspects that we have in the game. Because so many people are calling for, they should just keep the Chaos, armor. But like, it's gonna be like super hard to balance that, and I can totally see like why. First of all, this is not easy and might not even be possible at all, right?
Yeah, I think like we could totally do it. I think our worry is that the game becomes really fast, like quickly stale and boring, right? If everyone is equipping the exact same chaos armors and the boots and pants, right?
Yeah.
It's just not going to be a good. Everyone's going to then say, "Oh, the build diversity sucks," and it's
There's
like,
no
well,
more defensive slots or anything then in this case, right?
Exactly. Yeah, we've just broken all opportunity costs, which creates a lot of cool choices. On the chaos rift, like I think an interesting dev insight here that I think we really like. What we really like about chaos rifts, and I think it's something that we want to do more of, is that chaos rifts sort of integrated itself across the whole game, and we really like that sort of idea that it's not just this, green Helltide where I have to go to this thing. It's something that can sort of show up, and we really want to kind of do more of those types of things where it broadens and enriches all the activities as opposed to like you have to go to this one place. There will be some times when we say you have to go to this one place because we don't always want to do the exact same patterns over and over, but yeah, I think that was something we really liked about Chaos Rifts.
All right, yeah, that sounds interesting. I hope this is going to come back in some sort of form. Chaos Rift's just really cool overall. Then one quality of life feature that many people ask for, like especially like with gold being a bit of a shortage, and maybe also with the potential sort of cell phone coming into the game. Any chance we can get like a sell all button at the vendor?
Yeah, I think so. I'll answer this in a way I hope feels good. It's more efficient. We'd rather you get all of your gold from picking up and killing things as opposed to like picking all this shit up off the ground than going to sell it. Like we don't even really like how that's working with salvage right now. Like salvage was meant to make you feel good about the things you're getting, and it's clear the audience and the players don't really like that paradigm. So our sort of long-term intent is that more of the gold comes from the things that you're doing and less from the items you have to sell. Ideally, what that looks like is that how do I get gold? I just have to play and I have to kill more monsters, and we'll just juice the amount of gold we're giving. Excuse me, sorry, that was terrible. The thing we did do in season 11 is that overall monsters drop way more gold piles, and that obviously scales with difficulty tiers. So I think like the amount of gold piles that normal monsters drop went up by like 800% or something insane like that.
Whoa, that's a lot.
So killing normal monsters is going to drop way more gold, and then elites, when you kill elites, they're going to drop also potentially up to like 15 gold piles if you get really lucky. So we've injected a lot more gold into the monster killing portion of the game as well.
Yeah, I think I've also seen this like in the pits with Belial influencing it or something. There was also like this big gold prize that you mentioned. That's gonna be pretty cool. Next thing is about trading. Like, would the team ever consider like an auction house or an in-game trading market? I know this has been asked a lot, but is there any like hope or any development on this?
Not currently talking about doing any kind of additional trading systems or anything like that. I mean, quite kind of the opposite right now. We're primarily focusing on what is a version of solo self-found that can be in the game. But honestly, never say never. Like I actually, there's no plans, but that doesn't mean there's never a plan ever in the history of Diablo 4. Who knows? But it's not right now on our radar or something that we're thinking about.
All right, fair. What do you think about the DPS meter or something? At least like maybe in the target dummy area, because sometimes it can be really hard to figure out like what's more damage, this aspect, that aspect. I feel like just a very like baseline DPS meter to understand performance, or maybe even at a world boss or something like that. That's more dedicated, but maybe on the target dummy, any chance for that?
No plans for it right now. I think it's something that we obviously like giving players stats, like Zaven was just talking about in the tower, wanting to give more information to the player. So it's not a never thing. It's just we currently aren't looking at it right now, but that doesn't mean that we're never going to add it.
Okay.
It's sort of a priority thing on like where do we want to focus our time, and this is something that we know the players want. So as it becomes more of a priority to players, it's definitely something we can take a look at.
Okay,
Yeah, I think if you think about a tower as being this like streamlined thing, if we're really successful, it starts acting as sort of the benchmark, right? And the kind of the benchmarking tool. So right now, what other information we might need to provide about your run, we're really focusing on making sure the tower can actually provide that. And so like, oh, I know how well I did and what I did, right?
Okay, yeah. I mean, it kind of does. But it would still be cool to have like some way to tell at some point. But okay, I have 3 more of these,
Yeah,
and I think then that's gonna make a good roundup here. Boss materials. I think you increased like some of the stack size. I think it's still not enough. Like, can we have it like, I don't know, stack up to 999 or something? I still have all these stacks in my inventory so much, just filling it up with the lack of stash space right now.
Yeah, I'll ask a cheeky question. It doesn't
Okay.
mean that we're changing anything. I want you to think about this, and I want to hear, what your chat thinks. A lot of this would be a lot easier if we could just make this a material or currency. That obviously comes with a lot of trade-offs. So that's something we've talked about. Hearing feedback on that would be really helpful. But if it was all currencies, it would make this significantly easier and more manageable.
Yeah, I guess it wouldn't be tradable in this case. That's what you were hinting at.
Exactly. That would be the trade-off.
I think that would be okay. I mean, right now you can't like really like share the boss kills anyways. I felt that. I mean, I'm totally okay with that. That sounds good to me. It also fixes, some of the problems we had in the past with some of the multiplication of these items. So yeah, I'm all for it. Like that sounds good long term. Cool.
Okay.
Similar direction, like stash, but also like clan features. Like, in Path of Exile, you have these like shared stashes within your clan. Even in, I'm going to say it, Diablo Immortal, there was like a ton of cool clan features. Like right now, it just feels so bare bones. Like the community aspect of, I love to play with other players. Like we're playing an online game. Diablo is open world. I mean, obviously a bit contrary to solo self-found. Like I like to see so many options, right? Like everybody just plays however they enjoy playing the game. But right now it feels like there's very minimal support for like any kind of like clan feature or clan stuff. So are there like any plans like in this direction, like for the like midterm future or something?
So one thing that we are supporting on the leaderboard, I know it doesn't like scratch the itch here that you're talking about, but just kind of like indicative of this, as we move on development, what is the stuff that's useful right now that we know we can just kind of take action on? So as an example, in the leaderboard, we are talking about doing like filter options where you can see people based on your relationship to them. So I can see my friends, clan, things like that. Long term, I think we're just kind of listening to what the community actually needs from it. I'm generally of the mind that like, yeah, lots of games have lots of features. Even some Diablo games have those features. But if we're gonna bring it over, I want to make sure that like we do the due diligence to make sure it fits in the game and actually supports the stuff that we are building towards. I think there have been cases where we have taken a feature from a previous Diablo title even and said like, okay, we're gonna put this into the game, and it's like, well, the context is completely different. So it doesn't actually hit the same way as it did. How could it? Everything else around it is different. Clans are not such a, disparate feature, but it's still something that we want to be kind of careful about. Lots of games do like progression and things like that. There's nothing we're actively talking about right now, but as we start developing Tower, and it is a really big social system having a leaderboard again, right? We're open. We kind of want to hear what people want to do with it and what kinds of things they want us to develop. It's going to be very transparent, I've mentioned before. So if anyone has any thoughts or anything they desperately want and think is really important, tell us. We're listening.
Will do.
Yeah, I'll give a really clear example of like it just, the context of D4 is very different. We're always looking to add big quality of life additions to the game. I'll point out Armory. I think Armory was something that, everyone was sort of clamoring for because it's like, well, D3 had this, and we added it to D4. And frankly, like there are some people that use the Armory, but I wouldn't say it's anywhere near the amount of people that used Armory in D3. And that's because itemization and like the crystallization of your build in Paragon, it's just all completely different. So that's why we try and take a sort of measured approach on like, okay, what are the things the community is asking for? How is it going to impact Diablo? Is this the right thing to be focusing on right now? We just added the Party Finder. Time flies. I guess it was a year ago, and the expansion, and like that was a way to sort of surface and serve more of the social players of the game. So I think it's just important that we think about the context, and we're also driven by a lot of the feedback. So if this is a big thing that is continuously brought up and there's like a huge volume of people that are like, man, I really wish clans were more part of the game, maybe that becomes part of the tower, right? Like there's a big clan drive for the tower. That's something we're always listening to. And one thing, sorry, it's a long answer. The other thing we are looking to do to support social a little bit more is being more lax with sort of some of the party interactions, right? Like we were just talking about it earlier, but that is something that going forward, we want to be a little bit more open to the idea that you could make a Z DPS build and the only purpose of you is to make your friends and allies cool. Like we think that's a fun missing piece to the overall puzzle of what you can do in D4.
That's awesome. It always like in D3 was always like a nice way to catch up as well. Like if you, I don't know, you like for whatever reason you have some IRL stuff and you're starting the season a week late, you can just join the party and be like the support player in the beginning until you're strong enough in Diablo 3, to help your group, and something like that in D4. I'm all for it, man. That sounds great. Second to last one, I have personal interest in this as well because I still have my first barbarian that I made on the launch of Diablo 4, and I did the level 100 and the first Lilith kills and everything. I really don't want to delete that character, right? But we have very limited character slots. Would there be a chance for maybe a rebirth kind of feature, similar to how we have it in D3, to keep these old OG characters kind of alive in a way?
Yeah, I'll be honest, it's something we have talked about. There's no timeline on this or anything like that. There's some additional complexities. Again, we were just saying take a thing that existed and put it in this game. There's always little differences, always little gotchas and stuff like that. So we want to make sure if we make it, it's for the player experience of Diablo 4 first and foremost. But no plans, and it's not even a guarantee that we're going to do it exactly like maybe people think about it, right? So I don't want to say explicitly that feature is going to make it. It's not that. But the problem space you're describing is very real. We all feel it, we all see it, we all know it, right? And as when Vessel launched, right, you had some new slots, you had a new character you were going to make. Eventually, your players who are really playing the game a lot and making new characters all the time, they're going to max out their slots, all of them. And then what happens? And as you recall, we were just describing a potential new feature, right, with the halos, where it belongs to that guy. So there's stuff that we have to work through. And again, there's a very long future and long road ahead for Diablo 4 as a whole. It's not just this one feature. So we're in constant development. Diablo 4's got a bright future. I've mentioned that before. I'm going to say it again. I'm happy to always say it. So
sounds good.
Stay tuned. More information as we know. Yeah.
Hell yeah. And also,
totally. I'll even say I feel this, Rob, we're playing 3 different versions of Diablo 4, and I have an internal account where I don't even like deleting internal characters. It's but I played this one so much. So, totally.
You get this attachment to your characters. Oh man, this was the character I played on the launch of this and that. And,
exactly.
I don't want it. I feel bad deleting it. There's so much nostalgia on it. But that's
still have my day one wizard from Diablo 3.
Yes.
I've rebirthed that I don't even know how many times. It's literally my day one. I'm never deleting that. I've deleted other things. I don't care.
All right.
That one never going anywhere. Right?
Okay, so you're hearing us loud and clear on this. Nice. Okay, the last question with this bright future in mind. So there recently was an announcement for Diablo 4 coming to China on the 11th or 12th of December. And parallel, there's this event called the Game Awards. Should Diablo fans be watching that? What do you guys think?
Everyone should be watching
gamer.
it. Well, gamers,
every gamer.
We're gonna watch it. Yeah, everyone should watch it. And Diablo
wouldn't
gamers
miss the Game Awards.
Okay, we ain't missing it. I mean, that's going to be close to the season launch, so I'm really excited for that. Sounds good. Thank you so much, my friends, for taking the time, joining us here, and being so open about all the things coming for Diablo 4. Really appreciate the transparency and all the insights in those changes to come. Thank you so much, my friends.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you,
This
Rob.
has been fun.
All right, talk soon. GG, take care.